how often do we forget to thank God? Today, we're going to see a little something that this is something the Lord dealt with on a continuous basis, even when he was here on the earth. We're going to be in Luke chapter 17. We're going to start in verse 11, and we're going to end in verse 19. And we're just going to read it together. And like I said, we'll break it down afterwards. So, as Jesus continued on toward Jerusalem, he reached the border between Galilee and Samaria. And it goes on, it says, as he entered a village there, 10 men with leprosy, they stood at a distance. Leprosy, unclean, meant you were cut off from family, cut off from the religious activities of society. You couldn't go to the temple, cut off from society itself. Who you were before was almost unimportant now. What was more important, your entire life was now defined by your unclean status. So for Jesus and these 10 lepers standing at a distance is significant because it was required by law in Leviticus that everybody with leprosy must do it. And we see that they are shouting, they're crying out in verse 13 here. It says in verse 13, they're crying out, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us, standing at a distance. But what a bummer it must be to see him who could heal off in the distance, unapproachable due to your unclean condition. You see it, but you can't approach it. It's just close enough to see, but too far to reach because of their status. They were longing for a touch of God without a way to bridge the distance themselves. The law had condemned them as outsiders and outcasts, unclean. Contagiously unclean. Follow this. Contagiously unclean, they cry out, fully aware of their pitiful condition, to the Christ who has contagious holiness, who God says is clean, is clean. Once they're pronounced clean, they can go and rejoin society. They can go back to their families. You see, where it gets interesting here is the Samaritan has no home among the Jews. When these 10 had all been lepers from the borderlands, they were united by their terrible condition that had taken over and had covered up all of their previous identity. They were all bound up together in their miserable status. They were all unclean. It didn't so much matter whether they were Jew before or Samaritan before. They were all now something else lumped together, all unclean. They had suddenly found themselves with something in common. They had all been on the outside looking in. But now that they've all been healed, one of these things is not like the others. He will never enter their camp. They will never accept him as their own. All of those other ones are all gone now, back to their former lives. But this Samaritan comes alone to Jesus. You see, the physical cure for him, the physical cure now emphasizes his spiritual separation. And Jesus said to the man, the Samaritan, he says, stand up and go. Your faith has healed you. But I thought we already read in this story where they were healed of their leprosy, right? That's the whole beginning of the story, is they're healed with their leprosy. So when Jesus says, stand up and go, your faith has healed you, it kind of doesn't make sense until you realize that word for healed, the literal word for healed, actually means saved. Your faith has saved you. See, when the other lepers were healed, they regained their old identities, family and community and normal life. But the Samaritan discovered a new identity in Christ at the feet of Jesus.